Hey guys, Will here. So today I wanted to run you through the hardware configuration that we're going to be using for the 2021 season of the Porsche Esports Super Cup All-Stars. So we've been invited back again by Porsche. We had a lot of fun in the round that we did at the end of last year, and yeah, decided to give it another go this time around. We've got a bunch of different rounds, different tracks this time around. Going to be spanning over the course of about 4 or 5 months, I think, this time. But what I wanted to do today is run you through all the hardware we're going to be using. This is going to be the shot that we're going to be using for our streams. So we'll take you through the overlays, the GoPro view, the side view camera, and basically everything that's gone into making this setup work the way it does, and hopefully the way it will for the streams as well. There's a lot of things that could potentially go wrong. It's a very complex setup, but as you guys that watch this channel would know, we like to sort of try to push boundaries here and try to sort of, you know, extract the best we possibly can out of this for you guys. So we'll run you through now everything that we're going to be doing, and yeah, hopefully you'll learn a thing or two about what's gone into this crazy setup. So let's get into it. Let's talk about the screens first, I think, because that's probably the thing that's the most visually striking for people. So 3 65-inch 4K panels, they're Omen Imperium 65-inch, so they are actually gaming displays. They're called BFGDs, or big format gaming displays. So they're not TVs. That's something that's confused a lot of people in previous videos. So they run at 144 hertz per panel, and they are all connected to the PC via DisplayPort as well. So we're not using HDMI adapters or anything like that. I know a few people have tried to do similar with TVs and run into issues running adapters. So that is how we're able to achieve this with no fuss, and everything sort of just working. We are running at native 4K resolution here as well in iRacing, and we're getting around sort of 100, 120 frames per second. Without too many issues, running a 3090 graphics card, which we just finished installing the other day. We'll run you through the PC in just a moment as well. But yeah, that's the displays. And I suppose the other thing that you guys are wondering about is the bezel-free kit that we're running. So essentially what this is it's 2 of the Asus ROG bezel-free kits that I've kind of just double-sided taped to the screen, and we'll run you through this in more detail in a separate video later on, because this isn't finalized yet. This is very much just sort of using the things that I had available to me to sort of experiment with this and see if it was going to work, and then we'll finalize it later on. So we're going to try and source the lenticular panels ourselves to actually make a strip that's long enough that we don't have to have the joint in it. But as you can see, these take up pretty much the entire screen, so you can't use the standard mounting clips that come with those ROG kits. So yeah, we've had to be very selective with the double-sided tape that we've used as well. It's just that 3M stuff that doesn't leave any residue, similar to what you use on those wall hooks. So it all comes off the screen, doesn't leave anything behind, but it's nice and super sticky when it's sitting there. So that's how we've done that for now. As I said, we'll let you guys know exactly how it's all working, how we finalize it later on. Now, a lot of people have been wondering about the field of view of a setup like this. And look, I'm the first to admit that when you're standing back where Tom is with the camera right now, it does look pretty ridiculous. The sides of the car are too far away, particularly, on this side where the door is, too far from where the driver would sit. It does look pretty crazy, but all of this has been designed with content creation in mind. So the position of the cameras and everything is quite intentional. But when the field of view is set up correctly, what kind of happens, and if Tom kind of comes in with the camera now, you'll find that as soon as you're actually in front of where the driver sits, everything just kind of falls into place. So if you move around now, you can see it kind of all just works. Everything kind of falls into place, and you can look all the way around you, all the way back to the seat bolsters, and everything is in perfect proportion. So it really is a 1-to-1 ratio when you're sitting in the cockpit, and from the camera angles that we've got set up as well. But yeah, as soon as you move back from that seating position, it does kind of throw things a little bit out of whack. And I know quite a few of you watching this video are probably going to be thinking, what the heck, it looks a little bit crazy. And it does look crazy from further back in the driving position. So I just wanted to touch on that as well for you guys. So just in terms of overlays here, we're running RaceLab at the moment. We've been experimenting with a couple of different overlays over the last year. We were using SDK Gaming for a while as well. We're really happy with that one, but I thought we'd give something else a bit of a try for a while and see how it goes. And so far I've been pretty impressed with this. So one of the things I do like about this is it gives you independent control of each of the various overlays. So we can click on standings, and that is a separate element which we can then export, or not export, but we can load into OBS. So if we go into streaming info here, we'll just go back up to relative streaming info. You can see there's a URL which points to local host. So if we were to run this in OBS locally on the same PC, then we would just put that URL in as a browser source, and that would show up as an element that we can then move around on the screen. Because we're running a second PC for streaming, what we do is we just use the IP address in place of localhost for this PC, import that as a browser source, and we get independent control of each individual overlay. And then in terms of OBS, just while we're talking about it as well, we've got the Stream Deck here. I've minimized the screen here just so I don't get punchy and push the wrong button and end up blowing up the Starship or anything like that. But we've got a separate button here for our game view and our face to cam view, or in this case our GoPro view. I just haven't renamed it yet. And then our starting, be right back, credits, starting, stopping recording, streaming, and so forth. Also control here for our lighting as well if we want to do that just with the key light, but we're not actually going to use that for this stream, I don't think. And yeah, so let's get into the hardware side of things now. Now in terms of cameras, I think we'll look at the cameras next, and then we'll get into the rig itself. So we've got a Sony ZV-1 that's normally sitting on here. It's a camera that Tom's filming with now. That's the reason it's not sitting there. And that is what's kind of giving us that view of me sitting in the cabin. And we've attached that to the rig itself using this sort of armature here. We've got a separate video. We've got videos covering most of this stuff in detail, so I'll put some links down in the description below for you guys. But this is essentially attaching everything together to the motion platform, which is sitting here. So traction loss plus a seat mover as well. We'll talk about those a bit more soon as well. So this is all moving in unison together. And then we're using a Track IR. We did a video on this a couple of days ago too. Track IR, which we've sort of configured as a motion compensation system. So sitting up on here, you'll remember in the previous video, we had it sitting on a pole on the back of the screen, and that worked really well, but we wanted to sort of try and, minimize it, make it a little bit tidier, and there's a bit of tape left over from it as well, sitting on the back of the chair. So we've got rid of that pole now, we've mounted it off to the side here. Because we're only tracking yaw and x-axis, the sort of swinging around effect that we get exaggerated from the arm, sort of not being off center from the middle, doesn't really matter. So the receiver is sitting up on top of the screen, offset as well, so it's in line with the IR transmitter. And yeah, for the purpose of what we're using it for, it's working absolutely fine. So that's how we've achieved that. Then for the head-mounted camera, if we come around this side, we've got a GoPro Hero 9, which we bought a couple of weeks ago for the purpose of doing exactly this. So we've got the Media Mod kit on this as well, which was really, really expensive. I can't remember how much it cost now, but it was, I remember when I saw it, I cringed. The previous GoPro models actually had a micro HDMI output built into them, so you didn't need to buy the additional accessories, but yeah, had to buy the Media Mod to make this work as well. So we've got a USB-C power cable running in there for all-time on power. There's no battery inside this either. Now the trick to achieving that, for those who might be wondering about it, is you need to have at least a 10 watt power supply. If you don't have at least 10 watts feeding into this, it's going to switch off by itself and do all kinds of crazy things. It's also best to run it without the battery in it as well, because with the battery trying to charge at the same time, it draws even more current, and it also gets really hot on your head as well. So this, and also reduces the weight as well, not having the battery in it. So this runs really quite nicely. Sits on my head using GoPro's head mount, which is just a standard accessory that you can buy. There's no other funny adapters or anything going on there. We did experiment for a while with having the camera actually fixed to the platform, but it was a little bit more immersive and a little bit more, I guess, involving for you guys as viewers, having it mounted to my head, so you're kind of seeing a bit better what I'm seeing as I'm driving, particularly with the bezel-free kit installed as well. I just kind of felt like that worked a bit better. So that's all running nice and cleanly down to a little Elgato HD60S capture box here, which is connected to my streaming PC via USB-C. We'll talk about the streaming PC in just a moment too. So the HDMI connection goes into that, USB-C out, and that allows us to capture full HD at 60 frames a second, so it makes it nice and smooth for you guys watching. The headset as well, we're just running an Astro A40. I've actually still got some bits of tape on there from when I had the Track IR up here, because the reflective fronts on the headphones was actually confusing the Track IR system and throwing it off. So that's what that tape is. The reason we're using these headphones is quite simply because they connect very cleanly to my Go XLR just via a 3.5mm jack. I'll probably end up changing these again a little bit later on. I was actually really enjoying the Logitech Pro X wireless headset. It is quite nice having an untethered headset. It does make quite a difference. But, obviously running the GoPro on my head anyway with cables and stuff, it doesn't really make a whole lot of difference. But that's the reason I'm running that. A lot of people have been asking about that, wondering whether it's sponsored or something like that, because it does have the Astro logo on the ear cup that you guys can see in the footage. It's not anything like that. They did supply the headset to us to test out, but nothing more than that. So then let's talk about the rig itself, all the things that we're running on that. We're running a Next Level Racing Motion Platform V3, which is a seat mover. So that is, you know, as the name would suggest, just moving the seat around. We've got that tuned in through Next Level Racing software with the Traction Plus system as well. Again, we've got dedicated videos running through all of this in detail. The SimLabs P1X cockpit sitting on top of it as well. We've done quite a bit of modification to that as well, with the arms and bits and pieces all hanging off it, and you know, custom fitting it onto the Traction Plus system. We've got a Butt Kicker Gamer 2 on here as well, which is still one of my favorite of all time pieces of sim racing hardware. Every time I switch this thing on, it just reminds me of how good value for money it is, and just the immersion that it brings. We've got our bungee cord system here as well with the seat belts. And that allows us, when we brake, the seat tilts forward and we feel a little bit of pressure in our shoulders. There are some dedicated seatbelt tensioner systems available, but this seems to work quite well with the seat mover. So we figured, why spend the money if we don't need to? It works. So that's that. The Lusso Motors RCC V2 seat, which I still need to do a video on at some point. I haven't gotten around to it yet, but that's something that will happen at some point. Sparco 4-point harness. We didn't really see the point in going for a 5-point. We didn't have the hole cut out in the seat for a 5-point harness anyway, so it wouldn't have really worked, but 4-point seems to work quite well. And as you can see, we've got it mounted to the sides of the seat here, so the front moves independently of the rig, and then bolted to the rig via the Yoki straps on the back, so we get that tensioner kind of thing going on. And we also got the Boosted Media logo embroidered onto the seat as well, as you guys would have seen in plenty of videos in the past. So I'll jump around this side. We're running a Q Controls GTX steering wheel, which I'm absolutely loving at the moment. Ooh, I'm moving around here as I steer the car. So yeah, got the integrated LCD through Ultimate Game Tech, which I'm absolutely loving. Another reason I really love this is it does have the bite point clutch system, or dual stage clutch, which I'll be using to try to get the perfect launch. I need to practice that tonight, actually. Yeah, and all the thumb encoders for adjusting brake bias and things like that too. So loving this wheel at the moment. And yeah, just ergonomically as well, as I said in the review video that we did of this video, it's just a really comfortable wheel to use. And I do find that I'm a little bit more precise and a little bit faster using that wheel. So we're running that on the SimuCube 2 Ultimate wheelbase, same wheelbase that we've been running for a while now, with Hybrid Racing Simulations Zero Play Quick Release system, which works really well as well. The SimCore UM1 mount to mount this onto our SimLabs P1X. This is super solid. You can pull and twist on that as hard as you can, and it's not going to budge at all. Again, dedicated reviews for all of these things. We've got the Aeologs handbrake and shifter mounted as well. Not going to be using those for these races, but they're just there on the rig normally. I kind of fiddled around quite a bit to sort of get these into a placement where I felt like they kind of worked best for me. And this seems to work quite well, having a little extension off here. Gets it up nice and high next to the wheel, but it doesn't interfere with anything else that's going on. Then we've got the Apex Sim Racing button box with rotary encoders here. So 4 of those, and then the push buttons down the bottom. That's got integrated inside it as well a Stream Deck XL. So the Stream Deck XL is actually connected to my streaming PC rather than the Sim PC. We are running a dual PC setup here. And then on top of that, we've got the RaceLogic V-Box as well, which we've done a review video on previously. That gives me all sorts of different telemetry data live in my face as we're driving, and that is real-life race car tech as well. You can actually take this out of the sim and just mount it straight into a race car and use it in pretty much exactly the same way. So that's really handy and useful. Then down the bottom underneath, we've got HE Ultimates, which we're still running. We were running the Racework S1 Pro pedals for a while, but we had problems with the slave cylinders seizing up on us. So they're working on that issue at the moment. We are going to do a follow-up video once we get some replacement parts in. They have figured out exactly what went wrong and taken measures apparently to fix it for the future. So that's good news. But yeah, we're back to running the HE Ultimates for now. And I've actually spent quite a bit of time over the last few days sort of trying to dial them in a little bit better for the Porsche Cup car, and starting to sort of find my feet a little bit better now, not locking up quite so much. So I'm feeling a little bit more confident with the driving now than I was when we did the race last season. Look, in terms of all the sim hardware, I think that's pretty much everything. So over here, we've got a little USB powered screen, which is connected to the streaming PC via HDMI as well. And that is simply there so that I can put a chat console up there. So while I'm driving, I can see what you guys are saying while we're streaming. That's literally the only reason why that's there. And then we've got the Go XLR Mini sitting down the bottom here as well. Couldn't really justify the full Go XLR because I didn't really need the extra features. The only thing that would be nice to have is the motorized faders, but you know, this works quite well for what it is. It gives us independent control of our various different volume levels. So I've got the microphone input, we've got chat volume, we've got our game volume there that you can see running because the engine's running inside the game. and then our system volume as well. So that'll be things like Crew Chief, and I can have independent control of all of those levels. The output from that then runs not only into my headphones, so I'm hearing the live mix, so I can hear what you guys are hearing, but then the output from that runs back into the streaming PC as well, so you guys get a feed from that. And you know, the reason for separating it into a sim PC and a streaming PC is so that we don't have any parasitic load on the system that's responsible for basically driving the maximum frame rate possible. If we run it all off the same system, as I'm sure a lot of you that have tried streaming before, things can start to get a little bit slow, a little bit glitchy. And just having that independent control between the two different systems works really well for us. So we had, we had a PC that was, pretty much spare with a lot of the things that we've been doing. So we figured we'd put it to use doing that. If we come over the other side, just quickly run you through a few other little bits and pieces before we get into the PC hardware. The microphone that we're using up here, that is a shotgun microphone, so it's really good at focusing in on sound coming from a very specific source. It doesn't pick up too much of the spill around the rest of the room, which is obviously really important for a setup like this, with wind simulator. Actually, that's another thing we didn't mention, is the wind simulator sitting underneath there as well. That is an Arduino powered thing, and we'll put a link down in the description below for the video we did. This was a bit of a DIY project that we did just with a couple of fans, some piping and bits and pieces like that. So yeah, I'll link down to that in the description below. But with all that kind of noise being generated by, the wheelbase isn't too noisy, but fans, motion systems and everything, there's quite a lot of noise in the room generally. So we want something that focuses in on just my voice, and this is doing a really good job. So it's a Rode NTG4 shotgun microphone connected to a nice big boom to give it nice, a good amount of clearance to the motion platform. And then that's running through the XLR connection into the microphone input on the Go XLR. So that is all of that. In terms of keyboards and mice and stuff as well, that was actually quite challenging to come up with a system that would work and allow me to control stuff while I was sitting in the cockpit. Because obviously, having the traction loss system that can move, from side to side, you can't really just have a little stable table next to you or anything like that. So what I've done is mounted the keyboard tray on the side of the P1X here where it's out of the way. It's low enough that it's not going to smack into my screens as well. And then I've just got a little Microsoft keyboard with an integrated trackpad that I use for the streaming PC. We've also, of course, got control of the streaming PC's key functions from the Stream Deck XL as well. And then for the Sim PC, I've got a second wireless keyboard which I can use for that, as well as a mouse that's just connected to my USB hub that's sitting down in the corner there out of view. So, trying to get all the cables, I want to have the minimum amount of cables all hanging off this, simply because the more cables you have, the more opportunity there is for things to get snagged in moving parts. And yeah, it can be really hard to troubleshoot if something suddenly stops working, trying to figure out which cable's gotten bitten or something like that. So all working pretty well there. So let's have a look now at the computer side of things, computer hardware side, because that's where a lot of the magic is sort of happening. So this system here, this is our streaming PC, and this is the system that I bought or built about almost 2.5 years ago now. So this is the 2080 Ti that I was running in the Sim PC up until a few days ago. That's now been replaced with a 3090, all EK water cooling products internally there, and we do have a detailed build log on this PC where we showed you exactly how all this went together. We even did a bunch of guides on how to build something like this yourself as well. So it's an 8086K processor running at 5 gigahertz on all cores, so it's overclocked. The 2080 Ti I'm running at default clocks again now, because we don't really need to juice that up too much for the purpose of video encoding. But it's way overkill for what we need, but we had the system spare when we upgraded some other stuff around the office, so we figured we may as well put it to good use here. All custom water cooled, of course. Again, not really necessary, but we had it, so it's all good. 32 gig of RAM in that, and that is solely just responsible for taking all the audio inputs, video inputs from the various different cameras and bits and pieces like that. So we've got the feed coming out of the GoPro into the Elgato streamy capture thing that's down below me there. And then if we have a look quickly, there's a little HDMI capture thing. Now that was just a $14 job off Amazon, and I was very, very skeptical about whether that would work, because as you guys would know, a normal sort of HDMI capture card can be upwards of $200 or $300 here in Australia, and for $14 I didn't expect much, but it's actually done the job so well that I haven't really felt the need to upgrade it. So yeah, I think there's quite a bit of variation out there, and it's kind of a bit of suck it and see kind of thing, but in our case we bought a whole handful of them. They've all been really good, so that's working quite well. So that feeds into the streaming PC as well. This is our little audio interface here. You guys will remember I bought that probably 6 or 7 months ago now for handling the bulk of the audio recording. So that's just taking the output from the Go XLR, the line level output, and capturing it in to the streaming PC. So then we've got a monitor sitting over here as well. This is basically just a preview monitor for me so I can see what's going on. What I'll do is when we're streaming, I'll bring the chat across and up onto the side screen here that I showed you before. But yeah, this allows me to sort of preview what's going on, see all my levels, and make sure that everything's working properly. There's no issues with the stream. And then if we go in behind the curtain over here, this is going to be a little bit awkward to get in here and show you, but this is where the main sim PC sits behind this curtain. I'll try to sort of black everything out so that it's, you know, not in the way when we're streaming, but that is our main sim PC. So again, all EK water cooled. This was fully custom built, and again, we had videos on the channel where we put all this together. Yeah, it wasn't a cheap one to build. I think it cost me probably 6,000 or 7,000 Australian dollars to build it, but it's been really good. That was before we put the 3090 in as well, add the cost of the 3090 too. But that's it's a RTX 3090 OC Strix card with the EK water block on it. 9900K running at 5.1 gigahertz on all cores. 32 gig of RAM again, and a 1 terabyte SSD in that machine because it doesn't really need too much for recording capacity, just enough that it can store all the games and things that we want to run. And I think that pretty much covers everything. Oh, the one other thing I should mention as well, behind these curtains we do have this stuff called Acoustastorb. And again, we had a video where we actually showed you the entire installation of this room when we put all these panels up. But that just gives us some sound deadening in the room so that we don't get reverberation. Echo, for those who have been watching this channel for a while would remember we had all sorts of problems with echo in this room, and putting that stuff in has completely transformed the acoustics in the room. So it wasn't cheap again, but it's done a really, really good job. So just little bits and pieces like that here and there that we've sort of tried to do to optimize everything. Other than that, it's basically just lighting. We've got LED lights in the room, which are all Google controlled. I won't do it now because it'll trigger your Google Homes at home when you're watching this, but we can change the lighting to be any color we want. We don't quite have control in terms of, you know, the lighting compared to what's on the screens yet. So the whole room doesn't change color with the screens. That would be a nice thing to add potentially in the future. But unfortunately, most of the controls that are available for LED lighting at the moment all require a HDMI signal. And because we're running DisplayPort, it's just simply not possible at the moment with the technology that we do have. The monitors do have, and you can see it reflecting on my hand there, ambient lighting though, but because we've got a black curtain behind it, doesn't really have a huge amount of impact. But maybe we'll be able to jerry rig something off the back of that. Maybe we can open the back of the TVs and run some cables out and run it into the house, or I don't know. There's all sorts of things we can do in the future. But yeah, look, I mean, I think if everything works the way it's meant to, it's going to be a pretty awesome stream. We put a lot of time and effort into this to sort of try and get it to be the best it can possibly be. It's created a lot of opportunities, admittedly, for things to go wrong, but you know, this is what I love doing with the channel. I love sort of, you know, mucking around with hardware and sort of just seeing how far we can push the boundaries. So I really do hope that you guys enjoy the stream. If you do have any other questions, do let me know. Check the description of this video as well. We do have a bunch of detailed videos covering every aspect of pretty much everything that I've skimmed over in today's video. So check those out. If you don't find what you're looking for there though, hit me up in the comments or hit us up in our Discord community. I'm happy to help you out there as well. So yeah, guys, I guess all that's left to say is enjoy the stream. The link to that is down in the description below. That'll be starting at 5 p.m. UTC on January 9th. And yeah, I'm gonna get back into practicing because I guess the missing link now is my own driving performance. So we'll see you guys at 5 p.m. on Saturday. Bye.